No, I got it. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Double 18 Podcast live stream edition. I'm your host, Stephen Nagishi, and as always, with me is the co-host and associate editor of Sports Blog, Awful Announcing. It is Ken Fang. Ken, good evening, and obviously we got a lot to talk about over the weekend. Obviously, our main topics will be tonight. Week 7 NFL look back, which you have a lot to talk about, your Browns, and also we're going to cover the 2024 World Series preview and among other things. So let's get right to it, Ken. Week 7 NFL, my Bears were off. They were on the bye. And a lot of the stories, I think, in the NFL Week 7, is certainly kind of, there weren't that many super marquee games on the schedule. My Bears were off, as were the Cowboys, in the midst of turmoil. So I'm going to give the floor to you because, your Browns suffered another loss this time to the Ohio rival Cincinnati Bengals, but the game itself was not all that important, unfortunately, because of what happened during the game and the loss of quarterback DeShaun Watson to a freakish accident where he just kind of looked like he hyperextended his leg, and then it turned out to be an ACL injury. Fortunately, and the subsequent reaction from the Cleveland Browns fans, who have been, of course, highly critical of the team as well as the DeShaun Watson's play, and then there were people cheering after he suffered an injury and had to be carted off while DeShaun Watson was crying, which I'm going to try and pull up the information, the video of some of the Browns players reacting strongly to that booing. So, Ken, I'm going to give the floor to you. I want to give you your thoughts on the game overall and the injuries to Watson and how you feel as a fan as well as the fans' reaction to it.
Well, let's just put it this way. What happened to DeShaun Watson, we don't wish on anybody. Of course, he has an Achilles. He ruptured his Achilles in a non-contact injury. He was going to go back to throw, and you can see him go down. It was obvious it was his Achilles. It was his Achilles tendon. So he's out for the entire season. He was crying. The cart came out, and he was hauled off the field. Now, there were some instances where some fans were cheering the injury, and of course that got several of the Browns angry. At the time, there was debate in the Awful Announcing offices whether there was cheering or not. But I knowing the Cleveland fan base, I pretty much knew they were cheering. My colleague who was also there, he was covering the game, and he said that they were pretty much cheering, even though and Mike Hill, who was watching on Fox, he was watching the game. He noticed that they were cheering as well. So I look, my feelings on DeShaun Watson. I wasn't happy that he was brought in the first place. I wasn't very happy that Ben Axelrod, he was there, and he said that him and noticed. He said very much though and he noticed that there were several players who were getting on the fans for cheering the DeShaun Watson injury. I can understand it. Like I said, I'm not happy that DeShaun Watson was brought in. And the fact is that Jimmy Haslam was still forcing Kevin Stefanski to play him. I don't agree, of course, with booing an injury. No one deserves that. But at the same time, bringing in DeShaun Watson was a controversial move to begin with. There was nobody else that was really interested in bringing him in. But the Browns gave him a huge guaranteed contract. And despite DeShaun Watson's poor play, whether it was going back to last year before he was hurt and going into this season, and really not showing any particular joy, any particular emotion, or just any particular way of leading the players. He wasn't really showing anything. Ben felt that he was, and I saw his tweet. Ben felt that Stefanski would eventually bench Watson had this injury not occurred. I'm not sure of that. So but it brought in DTR yesterday as a backup, but then again he got hurt, and that forced Jameis Winston, who was the emergency quarterback, but not supposed to play. He wasn't going to play.
Right, he was inactive for that game for some reason.
He was inactive, and then he came in. So it was just a strange whole situation. It was just bizarre yesterday. And even though the Browns were in disarray, they had an opportunity to tie the game. They lost the game 21-14. They still had an opportunity to tie the game. So it was really bizarre. It was just such a crazy game yesterday, Stephen. Now that on my new schedule, I actually had a chance to watch the game. I had NFL Red Zone on one television, and I had the Browns and Bengals on NFL Sunday Ticket to watch the game. Again, Watson wasn't showing much before he got hurt. There were some times, of course, the opening kickoff was taken back for a touchdown that put the Browns on their heels. Joe Burrow wasn't playing particularly well. He has never won up until that point in Cleveland, and has lost basically about 5 straight games to the Browns up until this point. So again, and now you can go ahead and play the statement. Myles Garrett and other players were basically praising and calling him a model citizen. Go ahead and play those comments, and we'll react to it.
Sure. Here's your colleague from Awful Announcing, Ben Axelrod, you were mentioning. This is Myles Garrett's post game.
No one deserves that. I've seen him work his ass off to, get back in here and put a smile on his face and, try to put everything that's outside the facility behind him. Death threats, people come to his house, people, going after his family. No, like I said, no one deserves that. And I hate using the word deserves. I'm usually, pretty consistent saying earned. He hadn't earned it, and he doesn't deserve it. No, man does pretty much everything right. He's been a model citizen through college and most of the pros. He plays the game as hard as anyone I've seen. Puts everything on the line, willing to throw his body out there, and he plays the game at 100 miles per hour, and there's a risk of being injured, and that he took that risk. But we have to be there for him as a team, as an organization. We can't look down on the guy because of any mistakes on the field or anything off the field. We don't have anything. We don't have any more high ground to look down on the guy.
When he gets injured like that and not.
Okay, Ken. Obviously, Myles Garrett is a superstar with the Browns organization. Where do you stand? What do you think of his comments about him being somewhat of a model citizen through college and most of the pros? Because even with the most of the pros, we all know the things that he did off the field with the masseuse and all the fiasco he has been. I understand that not every player can look out for everybody's each other, off the field as well as on the field. Maybe on the field, they play together. Sure, they can understand the mindset and all of that. But off the field, it's everybody's game. You're on your own. But at the same time, when you're somebody like DeShaun Watson, who is involved in a high level of criminal activities like what he did, and then he becomes your teammate, it obviously makes you kind of feel, I don't know how to put it, but you get the idea. It is so difficult to, put into words or how to process it, knowing, he's a teammate, because God forbid, maybe your family member was a victim of a sexual assault or sexual crimes in the past, and then now, I don't want to portray, like say Watson is a predator of some sorts, but it does kind of make you feel, difficult to speak up, or at least trying to, be a football player and a football teammate. But at the same time, you have this moral obligation to kind of say something, or maybe in this case, as some would say, don't say anything at all. Where do you stay on this?
Well, look, you're in the locker room. You're kind of insulated from a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And, I can understand where, I can kind of understand where Myles Garrett is coming from. He's thinking, oh, well, this is what I know. He's never done that to me. But again, DeShaun Watson is not going to be a predator towards men. He's going to be, he's done it towards women. And I don't know what he said in the locker room. I don't know what he's told them. Myles Garrett, of course, is reacting at the moment. I can't blame him for that. But I can say that, knowing what we know as fans and what we've done and followed, he's not DeShaun Watson is not a model citizen. Okay. He would not have been settling all of these lawsuits outside of the locker room and all these cases, in order to play because he's a model citizen. Okay. But that's a very important choice of words. I know that Myles Garrett wants to protect it. And, once a guy goes into the locker room, you try to protect your teammates. I get that. But, I don't know what Myles Garrett knows. I don't know what he's been told. I don't know what DeShaun Watson has told his teammates. Obviously, they think he's a great guy because they're reacting to, what they see on the field. So, and sure, he tries. And sure, I'm sure that, he hasn't, with his teammates, he's tried, but on the field, I haven't seen that any particular good play. But then again, Steven, I just don't get the choice of words. But again, I don't know what he's telling him. I don't know what those guys know. But the fans shouldn't be booing a guy who gets hurt. We've seen it before in Philadelphia when they cheered Michael Irvin, the Philadelphia Eagles fans, when he cheered him when he got hurt in Veterans Stadium back in the 90s.
That ended his career. Yeah.
We've seen, and it's not a great thing when that happens, but also I'll say at the same time that knowing what fans know, I can see where they're coming from. I can understand where that came from. But it's a fine line, and the players, again, they're trying to protect one of their own. It's again, what happens in the locker room stays in the locker room. It's like Vegas. When you go to Vegas, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. They're trying to protect one of their own, but at the same time, it comes off as tone deaf when you say model citizen. So, and maybe he has been a model citizen in the locker room, and maybe he's been a great guy by buying dinner whenever they go out because he's a quarterback. He has that great contract. So maybe when he takes the offensive lineman or takes everyone out for dinner, he pays for everything. Maybe they see that and they say, "Oh yeah, he's a great guy." But and that's fine. But you know what? There's a thing in the rule of law and court of law and the court of public opinion that with fans, DeShaun Watson is not seen as that type of guy. And you ask the women that he's harassed and has treated poorly for the masseuses, they'll tell you otherwise. So it's kind of like it is a paradox. It really is a paradox because it's a tale of two men. It's a tale of two perceptions, and you have that perception in the locker room, and then you have the perception of those victims, and they don't, that train doesn't really meet. And it really is tough, but I'm going to have to say that I'm one of those people. I would not have cheered DeShaun Watson's injury, but I'm also happy that he's not going to be playing and probably won't be playing anymore for the Cleveland Browns. That's my opinion.
And I don't blame anybody for feeling that way. Obviously, his poor performance, along with what he did off the field for all the sexual assault charges towards masseuse, has just completely overshadowed his career. He didn't play for 2 years, pretty much, and when he came, when he joined the Cleveland Browns, he has just not been the same player that he was with Houston. Obviously, the fans have, I don't think nobody should be criticizing the fans for how they should behave. It's just, it just comes with the territory for being who he is. Whether his poor performance as well as, his past transgressions did not sit well with the fans, especially the female fans. The Browns have unfortunately a mess on their hand. You have players using, as I wrote here, poor choice of words, as we heard from Myles Garrett, trying to, stand up for, DeShaun Watson. And there's also another one from a long-winded one from Jameis Winston, who ironically himself also, criticizing the fans' behavior, but also Winston himself has had some, issues off the field where he had to settle a sexual harassment charges himself. Back in, I believe, 2019 when he was with the Tampa Bay Bucks. So coming from him, obviously it's a little rich, but the Browns certainly is 1-5, and you have this dark overarching cloud that's been hanging out for a while, and certainly Watson's injury removes him from the equation for even at least for the rest of the year, Ken. But the problem is, where do the Browns go from here? Obviously, the team is kind of in a lost cause right now at 1-5. You lost to the Bengals. Your schedule ain't going to let up anytime soon, unfortunately. But maybe with DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson playing, or maybe Jameis playing, there might be some sort of an uptick in the offensive production, but it's still, I don't know if that's enough to win ball games. With the trade deadline fast approaching, there have been some rumblings that Myles Garrett might be on the move, or at least teams are knocking on the door, trying to talk to General Manager Andrew Barry about maybe Myles Garrett among other players. So, Ken, how do you foresee the rest of the season for Cleveland Browns without DeShaun Watson? And what do you think, with the Browns kind of fast approaching, the deadline, with the record at 1-5, where do you see the Browns heading? And do you see Myles Garrett really being removed, or do you think it's just too much of a compensation to do some kind of a move right now?
Well, the Browns have to do something. I think right now, as you mentioned, they're 1-6.
1-5 right now, I believe.
Yeah. I'm sorry, they had a bye. They're a team that's in disarray. Again, the quarterbacking situation isn't very good. They could have offered a contract to Joe Flacco, who's doing great things in Indianapolis. But yet the Browns chose not to keep him because of this contract to DeShaun Watson. Again, they did trade Amari Cooper away. Myles Garrett deserves to be playing for a winner. We know what a defensive force he can be. And to be honest with you, maybe at this point you're just trading for draft picks. I hate to see that, because Myles Garrett has been an absolute force, and you want to talk about a guy who's been a great in the community for Cleveland. He's done that. But you also have to think about the future, and you just can't have someone languish. It's kind of like having Dick Butkus languish for the Chicago Bears all those years when having winless of 1-win seasons. You just can't have that. You want to have a guy to have a chance to win and win a Super Bowl. And, maybe if you can get some value for some of your best players, maybe this is the time to do it. So we'll see what happens. We'll see. But this is an organization, Stephen, that the general manager really needs to go. But I don't know what Jimmy Haslam or D Haslam want to do. They announced that they're going to be moving the team out of Cleveland.
Yeah.
The Cleveland's mayor made that bombshell announcement last week that they're going to move out of Cleveland to the suburbs, to a dome stadium. Even despite the fact that Cleveland was willing to pay for all of the renovations to the stadium that they've been playing in since they returned to the city back in 1999. So, I have never liked Jimmy Haslam. This whole thing with the Browns right now, it's all up in the air. It's all disarray. There was, and this is a team that went to the playoffs last season. There was optimism coming into the season, Stephen. But DeShaun Watson's play has pretty much put a damper on all that. And at this point, I'm thinking that the whole team has to get blown up right now, and it's probably gonna. You can't do it now. You just can't. Firing Kevin Stefanski right now isn't going to help matters. Although the Jets did that with Robert Saleh, and you're actually seeing what the result of that right now. The Jets are playing worse after a firing of their coach. So I think if Kevin Stefanski goes, you're having an opportunity of losing the entire team right now. So probably best, if you're going to make a change, if you're going to make a trade, do it now, get some value, and then make a change in your coaching staff and maybe your general manager, because right now it's just not working. But doing everything right now in midseason, as we're seeing with the New York Jets, isn't the way to go. And I'm just saying that I'm thinking Stefanski is probably going to go at the end of the season. And if they can get rid of their general manager, despite the fact that Jimmy Haslam has no idea what he's doing, that's got to happen too. So right now, this whole situation with the Browns and their ill-timed announcement to go to the suburbs outside of Cleveland is just not working for the fans. And Stephen, I'm in a place where right now. I wasn't very optimistic. I have not been optimistic for a long time. So we'll see what happens, and let's just let this whole thing play out, and where it takes us. Hopefully, with DeShaun Watson out, DTR can get some things done. We need to see what he can do anyway. So let's see what happens.
Maybe the only good thing that came out of this is Nick Chubb coming back from a horrific knee injury that took him for a long, long time to come back from it. He did score a touchdown, their first touchdown, which brought the crowd into life. And certainly, as long as Nick Chubb stays healthy, he's going to get his healthy amount of carries. Obviously, with DTR or Jameis Winston as at quarterback, obviously, you can't be asking too much from these two men to, throw 35, 40 times or even more, to help you win. You got to be able to establish the run game, and they have a very good game. They have a good runner in Nick Chubb as long as he stays healthy. I have a very good, a healthy amount of respect for the offensive line they have there. Really good offensive line. Joe Benito, Jedrick Willis, Wyatt Teller. Those are among the great, the linemen, the offensive linemen that they have on their roster. As long as they're not being, dealt during the trade deadline, I think that's something that they can rely on. Certainly. Let's see what happens, obviously, if the play of the Browns overall itself improve without Watson, or if this fan booing incident kind of puts a fracture between the Browns and their fan base moving forward. As obviously we know, this isn't what, kind of like when they left Cleveland to go to Baltimore, that got leaked out back in 1995. But this is obviously, still within a few, maybe a couple of miles down the road, but certainly leaving Cleveland to go outside of Cleveland, in a prime location in downtown Cleveland with, literally next to Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, if I recall, in my visit to Cleveland. It's a very nice stadium, a nice city.
Beautiful area.
Certainly, yes, and I just don't see the need to really, I don't know, build a brand new stadium. And no matter what you do, whether you move to, you know, Brook Park, which is a suburb of Cleveland, where they're going to planning to build a new dome stadium, or refurbish the one in downtown, downtown Cleveland. Obviously, the next battle is going to be how you're going to fund the money, and that's not going to go well if it's money that they're going to be asking public fund for, which the city of Chicago is at odds with both the Bears and the White Sox, because certainly, no tax amount should go into building a $1 billion stadium when the owners themselves, who are billionaires, can find a way to finance it themselves.
Right.
So that's going to probably add a little more, ugliness to this season. That's kind of really, really spiral out of control, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I the reason why Jimmy Haslam wants to build outside a dome stadium, he wants a Final Four. Also, he wants a Super Bowl because he's seeing that all the other teams that build a new stadium are getting Super Bowls, and he knows that if he has an open air stadium in Cleveland, that's not going to happen. So Haslam wants the Super Bowl. So he says the best way to do that is do it in a dome. He's not going to get a dome on the current stadium. It's just not feasible. So that's what he wants. And plus, he also wants the revenue of having concerts there and having a mixed use facility. That's what he's looking at. And Haslam is we've seen what he's done in Nashville, well, in Tennessee with some of his businesses, and he's successful in that. And but of course, he has been under investigation as well for some of them as well. So, but again, this is just ill-timed. I'm not impressed with him as an owner. Apparently, he sees Jimmy Jones and says, "You know what? That's the guy that I want to model myself after." But he's got to realize Jimmy Jones hasn't won a Super Bowl since like the 1990s. So it's one way to model yourself after Jimmy Jones, who is who's a personality in his own right, but also at the same time hasn't won a Super Bowl. So then the model isn't great. So again, Jimmy and D Haslam, they're not my favorite people right now, Steven. He's also going to try and bring his sons into this. He's had there's been a lot of hiring of vice presidents and adding a lot of executive tiers since he's gotten there. And some people try to come in and thinking that, I'm going to try and make money off the NFL. And yes, they do get a lot of money for the rights fees and all that stuff. But, hey, right now, this, as I said, this organization is in disarray. This whole season is just not been ideal. And the timing of this whole thing, especially the history with the Browns leaving back in 1994 and 1995, was just absolutely horrible. And what it did to the fan base, it just ripped the fan base apart. And then seeing what happened when it went to Baltimore and winning a Super Bowl with a lot of these same players, it's just it just leaves you dry, and it's just like you're seeing Cleveland Browns, leaving 2.0, even though granted they're not leaving the whole city, they're not leaving the market, they're not being taken out and going to another city, but just seeing that happen again, it's not good for the fan base, and you're asking a lot of the fan base here, especially going to a place where, again, outside the city. If Haslam can build a winner, and if this was a winning season and the Browns were undefeated, maybe the fans would say, "Okay, we see where you're going with this. We'll support you." But right now, it's not happening, and the fans are just angry, and I can't blame them.
All right, let's take a look at the rest of the Week 7 NFL schedule. As you can see here, the most notable game from yesterday was probably the number one game, Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings. Lions 4-1, Vikings 5-0 in Minnesota. The Lions in a back and forth matchup, beat the Minnesota Vikings 31-29. This is a tough game. The Vikings suffered their very first loss of the season. The Lions are on a terror. They were trailing 21-10, but roar back. Jared Goff has been just sensational the last few weeks. He hasn't really missed that many passes at all. Always high completions, high QBR ratings and everything. But the Lions, obviously, without Aiden Hutchinson suffering that horrific knee injury against the Dallas Cowboys a week earlier. The Lions, this is a very interesting team. We were discussing about Myles Garrett and his trade value. Obviously, the people here in Detroit, where I'm living right now, they have been talking about going after, Garrett or Max Crosby, who went to Eastern Michigan. And is somewhat of a familiarity with the local fans here. They've been clamoring, for the organization to make a move now. They want them to go all in. This is it's kind of like a Super Bowl or bust for the Lions. And this is a very interesting game. Certainly they were able to get by without Aiden Hutchinson, but I'm going to be honest, Ken. I don't know if the Lions can withstand the next couple of weeks without Hutchinson, because one of the biggest problem is they don't have any reliable pass rusher outside of Hutchinson. And now without him gone for the rest of the season, the Lions are in a very interesting position right now. And if you're Cleveland, you might want to listen to what the Detroit Lions have to offer and see if they can, make the Lions give, mostly probably picks, maybe not the players at this time of the year. So I'm very curious to see what the Lions do, even with the win. They still have a lot of stuff that they have to fix on the defensive side. And, it would be either Max Crosby or Myles Garrett that could be wearing that, blue Lions uniform shortly after the trade deadline. But, the Lions themselves, they finally beat the Minnesota Vikings, who have been a surprise team in all of football at 5-0. So, yeah, this is a really entertaining game that we saw.
Yeah, that was
yesterday.
Yeah, it was a great game. That would have been nice to see that flexed into prime time instead of having that abortion that we had watched last night between the Jets and the Steelers. We'll get to that later, but I gotta say that Detroit. They showed you something. This is a game that they definitely would have lost a couple of seasons ago, but they with this new attitude of coming in and on confidence, just to see how they played yesterday, going back and forth. Again, as you mentioned, they trailed at the beginning. They were down by 2 touchdowns, but then quickly got back into the game by scoring a couple of touchdowns of their own. Jared Goff has been hot. He's been absolutely sensational these last couple of seasons for the Lions. And right now, you have to say the Lions got to be have to be a favorite to get to the NFC Championship. The way they're playing right now, of course, it's still a long season. Anything can happen. But I got to say that I'm very impressed by the way they're playing. They made some decisions on fourth down that, again, Dan Campbell, that's the way he is. He's going to go for it on fourth down. He had a fake punt that didn't work. He had a fourth down decision that didn't work. But it worked out for him in the end. So he got it was would I have liked to have seen the Lions run the clock down all the way to the end? Yeah, I would have, but again, the circumstances didn't allow them to. But they got the winning kick, and Jared Goff is just an amazing quarterback. And yes, you're seeing the result of not having a pass rusher like Aiden. And maybe they get Crosby or maybe they get Garrett. But they definitely need someone in the middle right now. And you saw the results that Sam Darnold was able to make plays. without Aiden Hutchinson in the backfield. So maybe that's something that the Lions think of doing in the next couple of weeks. We'll see if they actually make a move, or if they feel that they can just, with their offense, can outscore anybody. But when you get to the playoffs, you're going to need a better defense. You're going to need you can't outscore everyone because the teams are much better. That's who you're going to be playing. So it's going to be we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks if the Lions make a move and reach out to the Browns or go after Max Crosby. We'll see.
Absolutely. The Packers came back and beat the Houston Texans on the last second field goal. 24-22 was the final.
Another great game.
Another great game. And I hate to be that guy as a Bears fan, but the Texans in their last offensive drive, they had a third down and I believe had the 10 or 11 yards to go. And then rather than running the damn ball, they passed the ball to the sideline for Stephon Diggs, which was incomplete, stopped the clock, gave them plenty of time to come back. And alas, they did that to the last second field goal. So I was pretty, disgusted, with the way Houston Texans botched their clock management there. So, had they, run the ball there, I thought that, they could have ran off another 20 seconds or 25 seconds off the clock. So I feel really, really, sad that, the NFC North being such a tough division right now. The Bears are currently last at 4-2 with the winning record as well. So, and as we saw earlier today, there was if the playoffs were to start, all four NFC teams were going to be in the playoffs. So that's how deep and strong that division is. I thought Minnesota was going to, crater, from the beginning because of Sam Darnold, but I was completely wrong about that prediction. It looks as though Sam Darnold's career is revitalized under, Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota. It would be interesting to see if, clock strikes midnight or if this is something that is sustainable or not. The Lions are here to stay. As long as Dan Campbell has that team playing at a high level and can able to, motivate his players through his antics and his messages, the Lions are going to be tough. We know the Packers, even with Jordan Love throwing 2 bad interceptions yesterday, he can still make some incredible throws on any moment's notice. So, it's going to be very, very tough. For the Bears, they have to keep winning in order to keep up with the division. They won't face the division opponent until week 11 against the hated Packers, who they've beaten us the last 10 straight games for the last 5 years. So if the Bears want to send a message that they're not the same team as they have been, they're not the pushovers, they have to keep taking care of winning games like Washington on the road, Arizona, and then New England before they face Green Bay. Those are 3 winnable games. So as long as the Bears continue to, develop a strong offensive game, even coming out of a bye, and an offense can pull their weight rather than relying on defense and special teams like they have done in the past, I can certainly see the Bears keeping themselves in the tight NFC North race. And eventually maybe in the actual playoff itself. So we'll see what happens. But I was not encouraged by what I saw from the Packers and the Lions this week. And the other marquee matchup, we'll get to these two in a moment. The Chiefs beat the 49ers in a battle of the mash units. And I got to tell you, Mahomes did not look good at all. Watching that game from pretty much the entire game, Mahomes threw some bad picks himself. The receivers are basically down to like a street free agents now because they don't have anybody worth throwing to, and now Juju Smith-Schuster is out of the action for the next couple of weeks. So that's another team that is in a desperate need for a quality wide receiver. Whoever's available, I'm sure that the Chiefs are going to be making the calls around the clock just to try and convince teams to give up. Maybe for Jets, Mike Williams, who got the wrath of Aaron Rodgers last week. DeAndre Hopkins with the Titans. The Titans are going nowhere right now. Maybe they might be able to pry away. But, I don't see the AFC teams maybe proactively wanting to help the Chiefs, get back into the Super Bowl. So that's going to be a very, very tough task. Maybe same can be said from maybe if the Chiefs want somebody from the NFC, that might be another thing to look at it as well. But not exactly an impressive win for Chiefs and the 49ers. Obviously, they're just banged up, and they don't have anybody that can really, really play. Brock Purdy did not look good at all.
Purdy looked
yesterday.
Terrible.
Yeah, he had some pretty bad moments,
Yeah, in San Francisco, you talk about them. Deebo Samuel couldn't play yesterday. Christian McCaffrey
and Brandon Ayuk just suffered a torn ACL. He's out.
Yeah, he's out for the rest of the season. So, and Christian McCaffrey, according to Adam Schefter, is not going to play next week either. So, here's a situation where San Francisco, remember last season around this time, they were just flying. Right now, they are just in a situation where they right now have the same amount of losses as the Los Angeles Rams. They have 4 losses and also a couple in the division too, Stephen. So this is a team right now that is, I don't want to say disarray like the Browns, but they are right now, as you mentioned, they're a walking wounded. And Brock Purdy looks like a quarterback that's lost out there.
Pretty average, if you ask me.
He just looked terrible. He threw a couple of interceptions that were just mind-boggling. And so did actually Mahomes. Mahomes threw a couple of balls that I'd never seen him throw. That he threw right to the San Francisco secondary. That I'm like saying, who are you throwing to? And there was no receiver in the area. Usually when he throws a ball, it's like he's trying to force a ball into a receiver. He's trying to throw that accuracy, but yesterday he was just threw a ball that a couple of interceptions that there were no receivers in sight. But as far as Brock Purdy was concerned, he just looked worse. So, look, good teams are going to win bad games, and that's what the Kansas City Chiefs did yesterday. They're a championship team. They didn't play well, but they found a way to win, and that's the main thing for them. And they remain undefeated. They have a couple of situations. They're going to be playing. Also, they're going to play the Browns down the road, so we can pretty much chalk that up as a win. So they're a team that, again, they're champions until they're knocked off, Stephen. Even though I think that they're still going to get knocked, I don't think they're going to three-peat right now. They're winning the games that they have to win, and they're the champions until they get knocked off. So, and that's a quality win. And I don't care how the 49ers are right now. And I know Bill Parcells used to say, you are what you are. Your record tells you what you are. They're a 2-4 team. They're still the defending NFC champions. And, that's a quality win for the Chiefs going in on the road into Santa Clara and winning that game. So that's a big win for them. Interesting. Also, yesterday, the Jets and the Steelers, horrible game in prime time. That game never should have. As I mentioned, Stephen, as I mentioned last week, the Giants and Jets. There's no reason for them to be in prime time. They got to get flexed out. We cannot allow the American people cannot be subjected to bad football like they were last night. I mean, Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson. He made some throws yesterday that the Pittsburgh Steelers receivers bailed him out. There's something that he didn't have in Denver. He made some really bad throws. We saw one last night where he basically threw the ball on the ground. But I would have to chalk that up to rust. But somehow he got bailed out by the receivers because they came back to the ball and made his bad throws look good. But then you had Aaron Rodgers last night, who just made some.
He's washed at this point, right?
He looked all of 40 years old, Stephen. I mean, I know that you've seen him in the division and beat your Bears throughout the years. He did not look like that quarterback at all last night. And this is a guy who said last night when he was asked what they need to do better, he said, "Oh, we need to stop listening to you," meaning the media. I mean, shut up, Aaron. Just go back to your retreat. If just go. I still think he orchestrated that firing of Robert Saleh. He managed to get
Devontae Adams trade as well. I think
he managed. And look, here's a guy that the Jets have basically catered everything right now to him, and they're paying the price for it. And the Jets, I don't think that this is a lost season. And even if they bring him back next season, Steven, we're going to see the same machinations with this Jets team as we are right now. And I don't care, and I feel bad for the Jets fan base because they're just too loyal to this team, and it's almost to a fault. I know I could say the same for my Browns. I've been loyal to this team as well, but they don't deserve what they're seeing. They really don't. And they saw it with Brett Favre. They're seeing it again, almost redo again with another Green Bay quarterback. And
it's ironic, isn't it?
It really is, and it's at least. Oh well, we haven't heard if there's anything that's going to be happening with a sexual harassment situation with Brett Favre. And Aaron Rodgers, I don't think we're going to hear that. I don't know, but it's just fascinating the fact that the Jets have gone for another Green Bay quarterback, and again they're in a situation where it's just a total. Almost like a totally lost season for them. And, they had a totally lost season last year when he had an Achilles, and now it's almost the same thing. And he just doesn't look like it looks like he doesn't want to be there. He really does. And just watching him last night, it looks like Rodgers wants to go to another darkness retreat. And if I'm the Jets, I say, go ahead and go to your darkness retreat, and we'll just try and rebuild and have to pick up the pieces with another quarterback. But, Steven, I said this last night to someone who privately with on X on Twitter last night, and I said that, and I'll say it right now. Right now, the Jets are a franchise where quarterbacks go to die, and we've seen it time and time again, from Sam Darnold to whether it be whether
Wilson previously too,
and whether it's Mark Sanchez with the Sanchez, whether it's Brett Favre, whether it's whomever it is, Vinny Testaverde. It's like, it doesn't matter who you mention. It's a quarterback that's rent a quarterback for 2 years, and then you go to the next guy and you try to bring him in, and nothing happens. So I just feel bad for this Jets team because nothing good.
They have talent. There's no question about it. They really have good talent. There's no question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. All right, so let's end NFL Week 7 on that note, and let's move on to the Major League Baseball. We finally have the World Series matchup that I think a lot of people have been wanting to see for quite some time now. Ken, it is the New York Yankees versus the Los Angeles Dodgers, and certainly it's a matchup that really. Draws a lot of attention, as well as the emotion from the baseball fans, especially if you're not a Dodger nor a Yankees fan. And the Yankees took care of the Guardians in a quick way. 4-1 over the Guardians. Emmanuel Clase unfortunately blew a game a couple of times in this series. The bullpen has been really, really taxed, especially for the Guardian side as well. Juan Soto hit a game-winning home run in the extras to send the Yankees to the World Series, 4-1. And on the National League side, the Dodgers also led 3-1. They lost Game 5 in New York in a completely a blowout manner. Against Jack Flaherty, who pitched very well in Game 1. And Game 6, it was probably a little more of the similar situation where the Dodgers just completely jump on Sean Manaea and their bullpen. 10-5, Dodgers win in Game 6. So from a ratings perspective, I think it's something that I think the executives would be really, really thrilled. Otani versus Aaron Judge, New York versus LA. The ratings are going to be pretty huge. But, the baseball, as you know, Ken, has kind of become took a back seat, obviously, in this country with the football, both, the NFL and college football as, become more of a national pastime now. I want to know from your perspective what this series means, and obviously it's a not something that everybody is going to be gravitated towards because of the money that both teams spend on putting together the team and winning and all of that. But how do you see this matchup, and from a ratings perspective, do you see any sort of a not a blowback, but also the fan sentiment about this upcoming matchup?
Well, you got the two biggest markets in the country. This is like Celtics and Lakers. This is the marquee matchup that you want, especially you've got the two biggest players. You have Otani and Judge, as you mentioned, and Otani is generally liked. I think you can see that. He's well loved, well liked wherever he goes, and he's a draw. I don't see Aaron Judge being a draw for being a wherever he goes. You're not going to pack the seats for Aaron Judge, but Shohei Otani definitely. I think this is going to do very well ratings wise. Let's say if the Mets and Yankees had gone in, no, the last time those two played was in 2000. Fox didn't do very well, so this is the dream matchup that Fox wants, and I think they're going to do very well. Jeff Passan, as you see there, was on with Dan Patrick the other day. I think it was today.
It was today, I think. Yeah,
it was today because it's Monday. I thought for some reason I thought he was on yesterday, but Jeff Passan said that this is going to be do quite well for Fox, and I agree. I think that this is a national matchup with two fan bases that and yeah, I know that a lot of the country feels that this is they spent the most money, $300 million payroll, and probably the better story would have been Cleveland going against the Dodgers, because Cleveland hasn't won a World Series dating back to like 1948 or so, Stephen. But I think that Yankees and Dodgers, it's a marquee matchup. You've got as you mentioned, Aaron Judge. You've got Shohei Otani. You've got Mookie Betts. You've got Juan Soto, Giancarlo Stanton. On the announcement side, you have John Sterling, who retired earlier this year and then came back, doing the Yankees win type of thing. I'm not going to imitate him. It just annoys me.
No. Yeah, and I was me too, but we get the idea.
But anyway, it's a fact that I think this World Series is going to do well. It's going to start on Friday. Game 1 and 2 Friday and Saturday. They avoid Sunday night football and Thursday night football, and they'll play games 3 through 5. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Game 5 if necessary, and then game 6 and 7 Friday and Saturday of next week again, following week. So I think that this is going to be a marquee matchup. It'll do very well in the ratings. Fox has been wanting this ever since they signed up for baseball back in 1996. They've had the Yankees win, I think, 4 championships in 96, 98, 2000.
99, 2000, yeah.
Yep. So they had it on those years when they broadcast the World Series. They had the Dodgers win in 2020. Of course, they won that in Texas during the COVID year when everything was antiseptic and hardly any fans. But now you've got a situation where fans are in the stands. Everyone's excited about it. I have a feeling that this is going to be a fun series to watch. Fox wants us to go 7 so they can maximize the most revenue. But I'll really be honest with you. I think that the Dodgers are going to win this in 6. I have to say the Yankees are actually going to be underdogs in this because of the firepower that the Dodgers have, and the pitch. I think their pitching staff is just a little bit better, and same with the bullpen. but it's going to be fun to watch. We'll talk about more, but we'll know a little bit more about this series when we talk about it next week. We'll have had 2 games under our belt, so we'll talk about it at that time. But I'm going to say that the Dodgers will win this in 6.
I'll say 7, 6 or 7 with the Dodgers as well. Here's Jeff Passan talking about this series and the overall viability from a national perspective.
If I would have said to the commissioner back in March, hey, your star player, biggest name in the sport, is going to be embroiled in a potential illegal gambling operation. He's also coming back from surgery. But, Commissioner, the Dodgers are going to be in the World Series with the Yankees. What do you think the commissioner would have said at that moment when he realizes that Ohtani's season might be in jeopardy physically and with the gambling part of this?
I've never seen Rob Manfred dance. I'm not sure how good of a dancer he is, frankly. But if you ever say Yankees, Dodgers to anyone in the commissioner's office, they're going to start doing a little jig, a little shimmy, a little something like that, because this is their dream.
But it appeals to a younger audience as well. I mean, this is nostalgia for us. I'm curious about the younger fan. You have Ohtani and you have Judge. Is that enough that, kind of captures the imagination of any baseball fan?
Dan, I'm curious about the younger fan too, actually. And to me, what this series serves as is a litmus test for just how big Major League Baseball's national audience actually can get in 2024, right? Like, I don't know that in terms of television ratings, in terms of interest from large media markets, in terms of the things that tend to lead to eyeballs on a series like this, you can't do better. And so I feel like we're going to see the ceiling for Major League Baseball here nationally, and it's going to be really good to have that baseline to understand, okay, just how much has the national interest in the sport waned in recent years, and how much room is there to grow beyond that as you try to bring it back from being more of a local, more of a parochial game than it's ever been before, and take it back to that national leviathan that it was once upon a time.
Well, Ken, what do you think? Does Passan have a point of obviously because baseball has kind of been more of a regional sport, more so, and that does this series kind of put the baseball back into the front runner,
Yes.
even going up against college football and NFL?
Yeah, I think it does because like I said, these are national fan bases. It's kind of like when you have a marquee matchup, like you had with the Red Sox and with the Red Sox and Yankees in the ALCS back in 2004, which is ratings heaven, or then the Red Sox go in against the St. Louis Cardinals. Those are national fan bases, and they're going to do well. I think this is definitely going to draw. I think this is going to be record ratings for Fox. They're going to do very well. Especially on Friday night, Fox is going to have this, and I believe they're also going to have Rutgers right after the game. After that as well,
Rutgers USC, way late game there.
Yeah, so it's going to be a fun doubleheader for them. I'm also going to say that this is. I mean, sure, Saturday has become college football, and with the SEC matchups that they're going to go against on Saturday, it's going to be tough for them. But I think that baseball is going to hold its own. I really do. And I think that's we're going to see some record. I think they're probably going to draw somewhere on the in the neighborhood of 14 million, 15 million. That's going to do quite well for baseball. They've drawn under 10 million over the last few years, especially like Texas last year. They didn't do very well because the Rangers didn't have much of a fan base. But now that you have the Yankees and Dodgers in there, they're well known. They're brand, Steven. I think that this is going to draw quite well for Fox.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll get back to the game, first 2 games, and our impressions on our next broadcast. We're going to wrap it up with a couple of sporting news. WNBA Finals. The New York Liberty is the champion, defeating the Minnesota Lynx in a very close contest throughout the series. Somewhat overmarred by officiating per se. Can give me your thoughts on the game and the overall ratings and the WNBA's impact this year.
Well, this has been the best season for the WNBA. The officiating, of course, did not reach up last night because as Brianna Stewart was driving to the basket with Minnesota leading late in the final seconds, first of all, she traveled. She took, I think, 18 steps to the basket, then embellished. Her coach during the timeout said to embellish any particular foul call. She was barely, I don't think she was touched on the way up. And then we called a foul, and then she drained 2 foul shots to tie the game, which allowed them to go into overtime. Interestingly enough, though, Minnesota had a chance to win the game on a 3-point shot. They had a very good luck, but the shot was missed. But, you can go in a conspiracy theory that the WNBA wanted New York to win this game. Because also Commissioner Kathy Engelhart had a dress with the New York skyline all festooned all over her dress as she handed out the trophy last night. But overall, I'm going to say that this was a great series, 5-game series. 2 games went to overtime. Sabrina Ionescu in Game 3 hit a shot to basically a buzzer beater to win the game. And Minnesota had a chance to win its 5th championship last night. Instead, the New York Liberty won in overtime, becoming the final WNBA original franchise to win a championship since the WNBA started in 28 years ago. So I'm going to say that it's good for the WNBA to have New York win a championship. It's going to be the ratings against the NFL last night, and also an elimination game on FS1. That's going to be tough. But overall, I'm going to have to say that this was going to be a good year for the WNBA. And you have Caitlin Clark coming back next year. Angel Reese should be coming back also. You're going to get more players coming in for the draft for next season. One thing that the WNBA has to do is get better scheduling, and also this is you saw this especially with Caitlin Clark when she came into the league. She was tired because they come in a week right after the women's Final Four. So anyone who's playing a long college basketball season comes right into the WNBA season. So it's kind of tough. But overall, I have to say, this is going to be known as a watershed year for the WNBA. They got much better players. They got Caitlin Clark. They have more people watching. They're going to get record ratings for the WNBA Finals, probably 2 million, average 2 million people. And that's going to be the best WNBA viewership in ever. So I'm going to have to say that this has been a lot of fun, Stephen, to watch women's basketball this season. And now we have college basketball upcoming. It's going to be a lot of fun because now we're going to have the Big Ten probably dominating this season, because now that the old Pac-12 teams are coming into the Big Ten. So that'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where WNBA goes from here. They got a lot of attention, both positive and unfortunately a lot of negative ones too. I know there's a saying, no publicity, any publicity is good for the business, but they got a lot of bad ones, especially from a misogynistic and racial aspect of it. So, and then there's also expansion. Can you grow the game, add more teams and more cities? Is there a strong appetite for the game, before they, wane down, or, whether the team starts to fold or has to relocate or not? Those are some of the long-term things that the WNBA has to navigate. And also the player's salary too, whether are they, fully or fairly compensated enough. There was some news about Angel Reese not having enough money after paying, all the stuff that she gets, paying a rent that's like almost $8,000 or something like that. So certainly those things have to be resolved, where, with the downtime, you're going to see a lot of players go overseas and play, but we've also had the situation involving Brittany Griner in Russia. So those are the difficult waters that the league and the players themselves have to navigate for the good of the game. And so hopefully this was a start of something big for WNBA moving forward. And I'm going to end there with the lies of the local sports streaming platforms and the disaster of CHSN, which is the Chicago Sports Network. So the Dallas Mavericks announced their brand new streaming service, Mavs TV Monday, which was a shout out to my good friend Jeff Skinwade, who is the Mavs sideline reporter and also work for their flagship station, 97.1 The Eagle, which is a rock station. And then there's the embarrassing disaster that is the Chicago Sports Network, which they launched, but they haven't really officially been launched as of yet because of the dispute with so-called Comcast Xfinity, and they don't have the app ready, and so forth, which I know a lot of fans aren't taking it very, very well. And I find it hilarious that you have three entities: the Chicago Bulls, the Chicago White Sox, and the Chicago Blackhawks, three losing organizations that has been run poorly in recent years. We've spoken highly critical of Jerry Reinsdorf, who's trying to sell the White Sox. Recently the news surfaced that he's trying to, sell the White Sox. I don't know how many percentages, or is pretty much all of it. But given that those Jerry Reinsdorf is involved, and then the Blackhawks, have fallen on such a hard time ever since their glory years of winning 3 Stanley Cups back in the early 2010s, long gone, obviously been marred by off the field problems with the Kyle Beach, sexual assault charges and so forth. You have 3 incompetent organizations trying to put together their own streaming service, and this is what you get, and kind of. So I thought it was somewhat fitting, embarrassing, and it's also sad because given that the Bally Sports and the regional sports network has kind of crumbled, many teams are finding ways to reach out to their fans on a broader level, whether it's on a local or national or even on a global scale.
Yep.
And then you have the disaster that is the Chicago Sports Network.
Yeah, let's talk about this next week. I have to get going, so let's talk about that next week. So let's
no problem.
And we'll talk about that next week. I have to get going, so we'll talk about more about that, about Chicago Sports Network, and also what the teams are doing. And also the Valley Sports Networks have now been rebranded to FanDuel Sports Networks, trying to get out of bankruptcy. So we'll talk about that next week. Hold that thought. We'll talk about that as one of the first things we talk about next week.
All right. Well, on that note, Ken, thanks for joining me as always. We had another strong people joining us as well. For Stephen Nagishi and Ken Fang, thank you for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll catch you again next week, same time, hopefully, on the Double A Team Podcast live stream. Take care, Ken.
Have a good night.